Almost every argument for running a language model on your own hardware is an argument about money. I want to make the opposite case. At 25 cents per million tokens, blended, hosted, is already cheap, and self-hosting must clear a large hardware bill first. So price is not the reason. The reason is that a rented model can refuse you, change under you, or disappear. This is the flash brief from Novel Cognition. Three properties of a rented model are the whole argument. A rented model can refuse you. It can change under you. It can teach under you. It can disappear. Only the first has already happened to a company with a competent security team mid-instant, so that is where I start. Then the honest costs, which are real and which I will not undersell. Then what the evidence supports about where this goes, and what it does not. First, the definition, because it gets used loosely. Running a model locally means holding the weights on hardware you control and doing inference without a network call. No API key, no per token meter, no request leaving your machine. It is possible here because the weights are published under the MIT license, commercial use, modification, and redistribution, no royalty, no revocation clause, and the cost argument, which gets all the attention, I want to dispose of early. At 25 cents per million blended hosted is already cheap, so cost is not the case. The case is that a rented model is a service, and services have properties that weights do not. Here's the thing we are actually talking about. 280 billion total parameters, of which roughly 13 billion are active for any given token. A mixture of experts. Most of the model is asleep at any moment, which is what all that dark grid is. Hold on to that asymmetry because it decides the cost question later. Compute is set by the active parameters, memory by the total, and then that first box on the bottom row, the license, MIT. That box is what this entire brief turns on. Reason 1. A rented model can refuse you, the least theoretical item on the list, because it has already happened, mid-incident, to a company whose security team knew exactly what it was doing. In July 2026, Hugging Face was breached by an autonomous agent. When its incident responders went to run forensic analysis on a hosted frontier model, the model's safety guardrails refused the work. The reason is structural, not a bug. In Hugging Face's own words, the requests were blocked by guardrails which cannot distinguish an incident responder from an attacker. A system trained to reject cyber offense prompts simply cannot tell the two apart. The team switched to an open weight model on their own infrastructure and reconstructed the attack from a log of more than 17,000 events. They finished the job, just not on the model they had paid for. Sit with that asymmetry because it is the entire point. The attacker was bound by no usage policy at all. The defenders were blocked by the policies of the models they had paid for. The lesson Hugging Face drew: keep a self-hosted open weight model vetted and ready before an incident, not during one, is spreading through security teams. And notice that is an argument about control, not price. Refusal also does not need a breach to bite. Any legitimate task that pattern matches to a restricted category, analyzing malware, red teaming your own product, handling clinical or legal text, can hit the same wall with no appeal. Reason 2. A hosted endpoint is a moving target. The same model name can be repost-trained, requantized, retuned for safety, or quietly routed to different hardware, and your prompts behave differently afterwards. Usually the change is an improvement. It is still a change you did not schedule and cannot defer. This project supplies its own illustration. On the 31st of July, DeepSeek shipped the checkpoint known as 0731. Same 280 billion over 13 billion architecture, same price card. Only the post-training changed, and it moved 145 points on Arena's front-end code arena from 1432 to 1577. 44 places at an identical price. Model updates are normally impossible to audit. The old checkpoint vanishes when the new one lands. Not here. Both rows sit on the board at once. That faint gray square below the frontier line is the April checkpoint, same price, 145 points lower. So the shift is measurable, not asserted. A large behavioral change under an unchanged product name. A local copy has the opposite property. It changes when you decide it changes. Reason 3. Endpoints get retired. A clean example turned up while verifying prices for the Frontier chart. Poolside's Laguna Excess Point 2 was withdrawn from its API around the 9th of July 2026, roughly 10 weeks after release. 10 weeks. Anyone who had built against it had a migration, not a choice. Weights on a disk do not sunset. And there is a quieter version of the same category. Rate limits, regional availability, terms of service changes, and the plain fact that an API call sends your input to somebody else's computer. Under a confidentiality obligation, that last one is often the whole argument by itself. That is the case for now the other side, and I want to give it real weight rather than wave at it on the way past. None of this makes running a model locally free, and the reasons not to are real. There are three. The first is decisive for most people. Memory is the binding constraint. Remember that asymmetry, cheap to run, expensive to hold. Compute per token is set by the roughly 13 billion active parameters. Memory is set by the 280 billion total. As arithmetic straight from the parameter count, not a vendor figure that is on the order of 140 gigabytes at 4-bit, purely to hold the weights, before any context at all. That is not a laptop. It is a large unified memory workstation or a multi-accelerator box, a genuine capital purchase, which is exactly why hosted is the right answer for most workloads, and I am not going to pretend otherwise. Second cost, it is slower, and I want to fence this carefully. What follows is operator testimony. It is not a measurement. After months of running the preview checkpoint locally, the verdict was genuinely impressive quality and noticeably slow. Most obviously in code review, where a long file at high reasoning effort turns into a real weight. That is testimony, not a benchmark. Third cost, you inherit the operations. Updates, quantization choices, the serving stack, evaluation, and nobody to escalate to. A hosted endpoint is somebody else's on-call rotation. So the framing is not local instead of hosted. The two have different failure modes, and most teams have only ever priced one of them. So where does this go? Three things the evidence supports, stated with the confidence it actually carries. 1. Post-training has room left at a fixed architecture, same parameters, same price, plus 145 points. But that is one clean data point, not a trend, and I am labeling it as one. 2. Open weights are tracking the frontier at a lag, not diverging. The gap between the top of the board and the best MIT license model you can actually own is around 128 points of human preference, roughly 7.5%. Whether it narrows further is genuinely unknown. That it is already small enough to matter is measurable today. 3. The binding constraint is memory. It moves on hardware cycles, not model cycles, so expect the ceiling on local inference to move in steps, not curves. And here's what is deliberately not being forecast, which matters about as much as the part that is. License terms, those are policy decisions, and they can reverse without notice. MIT today is not MIT forever. Regulatory constraints on open weights, and whether any specific lab keeps publishing at all, those three are genuinely contested, and a sourced brief has no business guessing at them. So, the short version. Run it hosted when you want speed, elasticity, and somebody else's operations. Run it locally when you need the model to simply be there. Unchanged, unrefusing, unmetered, and not sending your work anywhere. Most teams will do both, and that is the correct answer. But the useful question was never which is cheaper. It is which failure you can least afford. And the honest reason to hold the weights yourself has nothing to do with the invoice. That is the flash brief. Independent analysis from the Novel Cognition Network, sourced and not affiliated with any of the labs named in it. The written brief, the frontier chart, and the cost arithmetic are all linked below. Thanks for listening.